All right, all right. Hello, and welcome back to Influential Dental, where we are interviewing some of the most influential people in the dental space in the world. And today we have a very exciting guest, Ophir. He's the founder and CEO of Pearl, who I'm just so excited about our conversation to have today that we're going to, kind of deep dive into his life and his journey. He also had a father, I believe, who was a dentist. And so I can't wait to hear more about just kind of how you got into dental with AI. But before we do that and jump in, I want to welcome also my co-host, Michael Keeter, to the show. Thank you for being here, Michael. Good to see you again. So welcome, Ophir. Thank you so much for being here today. Really, really excited to chat with you. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the AI space. I think you had co-founded or founded a company prior to Pearl, right? That got you kind of into this space.
I've really, on some level, been in specifically this applied computer vision space, which is a field of AI for really almost 20 years now. So, in a lot of ways, it's really been very fundamental to my entire career as an entrepreneur. I went to Carnegie Mellon and was exposed to the technology around image recognition, computer vision as far back as my days in college. And that's really been kind of a thread that's been consistent through a lot of what I've done.
So I can't wait to kind of learn more about you. And it's funny because I'm a KOL for your company. And I'm super thrilled, a fairly new one at that. We've had Brian Kaleo, who also speaks for you guys on our show, and a lot of fun, super good guy. There's so many wonderful things. And I just recently, because I was telling you right before the show that I got displaced by the fires and ended up moving to Burbank, and I just got a new dentist, and right away they brought out Pearl, and I was so happy because it was the first dentist that I had gone to that actually had Pearl. And it was so next level to me. Literally can't believe other people don't have this in their office. What do you, just out of curiosity, why doesn't everybody use this right now in their office? Are you seeing a reason? I know it's trending very quickly now, but why wouldn't everybody have this?
I think new technology just takes time to find its way into the entirety of an ecosystem. From my perspective, that's kind of the last on my list of concerns. Like, it's very obvious to me that this will be in every practice globally and an absolute standard of care. I think it's actually happening pretty quickly, but it's just not evenly distributed. I think what we're finding, our perspective at Pearl, is that a lot of the early adopter, very active sort of cohort, folks that engage on LinkedIn, that go to conferences, that are just more active in the industry, and that are more early adopter in nature, have signed on. I think the remaining component that needs to occur is just to get to every nook and cranny of the globe. There's plenty of places where, I don't even think folks have know that it exists as an option.
It's incredible, right?
So, part of the challenge is just generating awareness. Typically, we're able to sign folks on as quickly as we're able to become aware and familiar with the capability set. But I think it's happening at a reasonable clip, and I don't think it'll be too much longer until it is perceived as a general standard of care, and the vast majority of the industry does utilize the technology on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I hear you guys talk about it as sort of like the second opinion, right? So, I mean, obviously, there should be no pushback because it only helps doctors and it only helps people in the practice, treatment coordinators, everybody else to show that there's a trust component involved in, anything.
We surface 37% more disease per radiograph encounter. We make case presentation and patient communication much more straightforward and sort of easy for the patient to understand what the doctor is trying to communicate, which historically is always a challenge when you're dealing with radiography. And on top of that, there is just so much in the way of um, automation and the systemization of practice performance and the approach to systematic dentistry on a day-to-day basis that there's just a huge amount of value there, even beyond just core second opinion capability. We describe that capability as sort of a keystone technology because it makes so much more possible as sort of a platform to build on top of. Once you're able to understand a patient population clinically and the status clinically, there's just a lot of really interesting work to do and to layer on top of that. So it really is a very powerful capability in and of itself.
Which came first, the AI or the dental space for you?
Well, the AI definitely came first given I've been doing it for so long. And I've launched a number of companies driven by this technology, as I mentioned. In 2015, I made the decision that I wanted to apply this technology in the healthcare space and started at my previous company investigating opportunities around that. So my previous company grew to be fairly large and had capacity to incubate other opportunities. And initially looked at a variety of applications in medicine, brain cancer, breast cancer, lung nodules, things like that. Dentistry was always very top of mind, so dentistry is part of that examination set as well, and pretty quickly came to believe that dentistry is where I wanted to focus my time and energy. As you mentioned, my father is a retired dentist, so I spent a lot of my childhood just in that environment. I used to spend a lot of time in the office. I used to develop film with my dad. I used to watch him do procedures for hours on end when the patients were willing to allow it. And I thought it was very fascinating. I ended up going the kind of computer science route. I didn't go into dentistry myself, but I felt very familiar with it. And if you look at dentistry, I really do think that, in my perspective then and now, is that it is, first of all, a very necessary application to elevate the standard of care, particularly in this industry. I could talk about why, but also there's just so much more dental radiography captured every day than any other form of medicine. I mean, magnitudes of order more. So there's just inherent utility in that fact. You also sort of combine that with the fact that dentists are trained to do so much. Part of what they're trained to do is read radiography, but they are not full blown radiologists. There's really only about 180 maxillofacial radiologists in the US. So typically, the radiologists and dentists are the dentists, and they did not receive the kind of training that a typical radiologist will receive. And a lot of them are leaving college not totally proficient at sort of identifying caries extremely well, for example. And I say this having interfaced with so many deans at so many dental schools and with the student body as well, and just analyzing the status of where they're at. It's such an inherently challenging thing to do. So I do think that this diagnostic aid is very helpful, particularly for this cohort. And I also like that we're not displacing anyone. Like we're just kind of in the process of helping and unburdening. We're not putting anyone out of a job. And that's also a nice feature. Access to data is a big deal when you're talking about building computer vision AI systems. It tends to be much more easy to access dental data. So that was another thing we observed early on is we were able to get access in a compliant manner to large data sets, and that was much more challenging. I also think dentistry is a very entrepreneurial environment where people are able to adopt technology fairly rapidly. You're not selling into these large hospital groups with these very clunky sort of 7-year deals. There's just a lot of reasons like that where I thought that this would be a very natural application. That being said, I think this is an inevitability across the entirety of the radiographic landscape in all forms of medicine. And lots of other companies are doing interesting work for other applications.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's a long time coming in the dental space. Being in the industry for about 19 years myself on the implant side of the business, prosthetics, and now with influential dental, I do see a need for it. And so usually dentists aren't the most early adapters, but I do think you're finding that more and more with AI and what you're doing because again, it's all around us, right? I do want to ask you about your newest application for kids because I do think that's something that's huge and one, how you can make it fun, not only for the kids, but the parents and diagnosis. Because I do think dental care early on is very important. So can you share a little bit about your applications with the newest when it comes to children and the diagnosis using Pearl?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, my observation, and I think even in the case of my own father, is that dentists typically enjoy doing dentistry. It's why they got into the field. They're good at it. It's interesting work. It's artistic work. It's technical work. What they don't enjoy is the massive and often overwhelming burden of just running an entire practice and managing staff and dealing with taxes and dealing with payers and all this stuff. So part of our overarching goal at Pearl is just to sort of holistically unburdened dentists so that they can focus on their craft and enjoy it. Specifically with second opinion for kids, that was actually influenced somewhat by me taking my own 4-year-old to the dentist. He's an amazing dentist. We were kind of chatting about the technology. She was familiar with Pearl, didn't know that I was the founder of Pearl. So that was kind of a fun connection to be made. And we had just gotten very focused on pediatric application, a whole suite of pediatric services at Pearl as well. And we sort of converged on this notion that, you want to communicate in a very friendly way to children in that environment. But as importantly as you want to communicate in a very clear and friendly way to the parents as well. It's kind of an overwhelming experience to be in that chair. And this notion of kind of making the entire experience more accessible and more playful with these cute little sugar bug monsters and, accessible colors, and it didn't feel so clinical. Just felt
I
like a
saw
really
the
nice.
demo, by the way, and it is
Yes.
so cool. It is so cool because I have little ones too. I have a 5, a 7-year-old, and a 16-year-old who probably would like it too. But I know what it's like at that age and, how wonky it can be to go to the dentist
For
if you don't
sure.
set that experience up. I have the doctor who brought me in, Dr. Zubiak, Dr. Mike Zubiak. He brought me into dental, whatever, 16 years ago. And he built, actually had my husband build it for him, a lab for the kids, like a kids lab. And so they can look at the, bacteria under a microscope and stuff. But I think between that and the AI, the diagnostic features, I think it's so much fun. And the kids can start to love dentistry out of the gate rather than fear it.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's not only so that's kind of the front end and how we, and the presentation layer, and we make kid friendly reports and all this stuff. But also, if you're going to do a good job with this technology with that age group, there are also just technical challenges to overcome and optimize around. Obviously, things like mixed dentition, braces, like all of these realities affect the models pretty dramatically, and you really need to dedicate yourself and resources to training around a great experience there. So it all came part and parcel with that effort.
I want to switch tracks a little bit because on Influential Dental, Mike and I like to deep dive into people's personal worlds a little bit. And I'm kind of curious just a little bit about your journey. You obviously were going to the dental practice early on with your dad being a dentist, but what is your overall journey kind of look like as an entrepreneur from the entrepreneurial perspective? Because you've created something very successful and you're very well liked in the industry. You have a very good reputation for countless reasons.
Mm.
And we built this brand on lifting people up who are lifting others in the industry. And you're one of those guys that's just a super good human. You're so down to earth everywhere you go, everybody can approach you. So tell us a little bit about why are you so, genuine and what's your experience been like as an entrepreneur?
Well, I appreciate all those compliments, first of all. My experience, yeah, look, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I'm kind of a very classic in a lot of ways, like Silicon Valley entrepreneur, started a lot of ventures, raised hundreds of millions of dollars in capital. The key reason I wanted to pursue something in healthcare, ultimately, if I'm being honest, is that we grew a pretty large, multi-billion-dollar enterprise at my last company in the advertising and media space, leveraging a lot of the same technology. And I never wanted my career to be defined by that. I just didn't think that I was very proud of what we built, obviously, but I didn't think that we were necessarily adding like a huge amount of net new good to the world. Built a successful business, doing a thing in a large industry. And I ran that company for 11 years. But, I feel like Pearl is probably the last company, very likely the last company I'll run from the ground up as a CEO.
At 20 years old now, you feel like you're done. I'm
Well, I
kidding. He's
mean,
not 20, but he's young and it's so
I've been
impressive.
doing it for a while, and it's a real grind to
Yeah.
do these things from 0 to 1. And there is just a massive amount of time and pain that you need to undergo in order to make one of these companies every single time. It's unavoidable. And I wanted to try to do something that would have a positive impact on the world. When we incubated this opportunity, I took it to my board. We ended up spinning out a few companies from my last company. And I went to the board after 11 years of running Gum Gum, my previous company, and told them I'm going to go run Pearl. And they were like pretty shocked because, it was a big successful company and I had a good life and it worked so hard to get there. And for me, it was really about trying to dedicate the next decade or so of my life to doing something that would have an impact. Um, and so we kind of did that. And I mean, early on in my career, I was given advice, what I think is generally good life advice for everybody that is alive today, which is that we're all sort of inundated with like options and optionality. That's kind of one of the challenges of the current generation. There's actually too many options, especially for the young generation. Like you can kind of do anything, you can go anywhere, you can be anything. And that's obviously wonderful and freeing, but it's also debilitating to I think a lot of people because there's just an overwhelming amount of options available to them, not sure which direction to go. And I think that there's no such thing as like the best path or decision. It's just about like making a decision and then like fully committing to it and pursuing that path. That's kind of the thing that you can do. And you make it good. You make it as good as it can be. And you don't know what the other side would have turned out to be. And oftentimes we sort of assume that the grass is greener, but we discount what that would have entailed, right? So I really love Pearl and the application of this technology here and the kind of work that we're doing genuinely. And I'm very happy to be doing something that I feel is affecting humanity in a positive way, more so than the work I was doing before. And if anything, I would say that, me and I think the people that work at Pearl are genuinely interested in delivering this value to the industry in a way that is really not driven by like trying to make money. Like, obviously, we'd all like to make lots of money. Money's great. We assume that will come with success, but that's just not like the driving force. We're not never looking for a sale or a flip or anything like that. We're really trying to build a transformational company in this industry. And I think that there's space for it because like the software reality in dental is just like lacking pretty considerably. You have a lot of software in the category, but a lot of that software is legacy in nature. And it exists because like hardware manufacturers had to build software front ends, but they were not really software entities at their core. And it's also challenging to build a good software in this space because it's so incredibly fragmented. Um, there's just this effort of like needing to normalize all of the data in the industry coming from all these disparate sources is in and of itself a new challenge that we see a lot of companies struggle with. And I think we've raised enough capital and put enough smart people together to kind of solve some of these building block oriented problems that similarly like give us a platform to do really interesting work.
No, that's great, and I think the root cause of all of us is yearning to do more with what we have and uplifting others around you. It doesn't have to be an either or, right? It can be you're doing something good for the industry, something good for humanity, and also something good for yourself and your shareholders. It doesn't have to be something independent of each other. My question would be is on influence. Obviously, the company is influential just by what you're doing and how you're growing and the acceptance that you've had. Can you tell me some of the more influential people maybe in your life, whether it's a bit young, Ophir, or someone in college, or even someone as you started some of your companies, who's been influential to you? And then how are you influential, I guess, like you said, to that next generation or to that up and coming person within your company or a strategic partner
Yeah.
that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, like the technology space, I would say, is very much driven by like mentor mentee type of relationships, whether they're formal or informal. I have a lot of folks that come to mind in my journey. Like Howard Morgan, for example, is really a legend in the VC space. He was a professor at, I think at UPenn, and he had one of the founders of Renaissance Capital. He's behind a lot of the major VC firms today. Now he's actually working over at B Capital with Eduardo Saverin, but he was at First Round Capital prior to that. He was the first real like VC to ever believe in me and back me, and that was my early 20s, and that really opened the floodgates to everyone being interested. So
Yeah.
I owe him a debt of gratitude. He's still somebody I speak to often. for advice and on all sorts of subjects. He's also an investor in Pearl. And David Sachs is an interesting one, probably a more controversial one, given that he's now the AI czar of America. So he was the person that I had first spoken to. I've known him for like 20 years. And I told him about this notion of spinning out Pearl from my last company. And because he had just come by into the office just to visit and see what was going on. And he was like, well, I just launched a VC firm and like, I really want to back this. And we basically like did a handshake deal like on the spot. And we just agreed to work together in that capacity. And he's incredibly brilliant, just a phenomenal operator and product person and really just runs circles around everyone. So he's been very interesting to be connected to for so long. And then I would say, there's team members at Pearl that I've worked with for a decade plus, and they're just much better than me at so many things. Like they basically let me live in the product. I like they let me live in the place where I can build the future and build relationships and really not have to be totally inundated by the operations of the business. One person in particular that comes to mind is our current COO, Ben Plomian, who historically was a CMO at my previous companies, was a CGO, was a CRO. He's kind of had every C-level title imaginable. He's great at all of them. And he's a phenomenal operator. We're perfect complements to each other. And I can go on down the line of other sort of veterans that I've worked with for a long time. So that's been really nice to be able to kind of bring trusted folks in from my previous endeavors into Pearl. And that's one of the benefits of having done it before, is that you have a team that you can bring along.
Your team's been phenomenal, by the way. I've dealt with so many people, met so many people at the shows. Just even people running the booth at Dykema, to you name it. Every single person that I've dealt with has been just phenomenal, and they're just really, really, really grounded, good people. So it's such a treat. I presume that you get invited to speak a lot of places. Is that the case because you've built this incredible company? And outside of dental, are people inviting you to come in and inspire young people, inspire people in this space? And what does that look like? And with your busy schedule, are you able to accommodate some of that? I mean, obviously you showed up for our show today. Thank you so much. We're really grateful. But what's that look like?
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate that comment about our team, and I think you've met Erica and Mackenzie as well, right? I think that they're really great. So I think we've gotten like really good dental DNA and industry veterans, as well as sort of just general operators that are very good and technical as well. Yeah, in terms of speaking, I would say yeah, there's a lot of invitations. There's like four. We actually have a meeting, I think tomorrow or the next day to try and figure out like my next few months of activity. I don't like to spend a lot of time on the road being like a showman, just for the sake of my own um sort of like persona. I'm not that interested in it, to be honest. If it's a very interesting opportunity, I'll do it. But I much prefer to be like working with the team on a day-to-day basis. So I know there's an opportunity to come up in Dubai and there's one in London in March, and I'm trying to decide what to go to and what not to. And pretty much I'll only do it if it's beneficial to Pearl on some level, or if it's just like super interesting.
Yeah, I think that's the question, because as a busy entrepreneur who's running a company of this size, one of the things that people come to us about a lot, even just with our team trainings and that type of thing and our own speaking, is burnout prevention, right? And
Mhm.
it's buzzy, it's a conversation people are having. But the reality is, a lot of people are just trying to figure out how to say no to the right things.
Yeah.
So, what's your secret?
I'm good at saying no. I pretty much like anything industry oriented. We just have like a process that goes through the team. We happen to have a lot of very capable speakers at Pearl. Often they don't have my title, but like they're better positioned to speak on particular subjects than I am. So like I'm very encouraging of our team to build that muscle, and we really try to like sort of get lots of folks on stage. But I don't know. It kind of is just like a depends on the nature of the opportunity and the schedule. And we do what we can.
You had mentioned something that caught my ear. You thought about the healthcare space, but then decided to go into the dental space. Obviously, you're building Pearl. Where are you at in Pearl in the dental space? Are you halfway where you want to be, just at the infancy? And then are you looking to perhaps get into the healthcare space with your technology down the road, or is that something too soon to even think about or talk about?
Yeah. I mean, look, we have big ambitions for Pearl, so I would say we're still in early innings. I think that what we're doing is placing the basic building blocks, important building blocks and critical technologies, putting them in place so that we can do much more expansive work around, things like RCM and automation and entirely new paradigms for interacting with the office environment and data and stuff like that. I think there's really interesting stuff coming. Um, we're definitely interested in systemic health, primarily as it connects back to oral health. We are the only company with both 2D and 3D FDA clearances. So we've been focused for years now on CBCT and have an increasingly expanding set of capabilities there that inherently drop you into medicine and sort of outside of dental. So things like sleep apnea and airways and cancers and stuff like that. We also have partnerships with universities and certain DSOs, some announcements coming soon around this as well, that are also very interested in these topics. And we're doing a lot of really interesting joint research together to try and really solidify this sort of systemic oral health connection, which we know is real, we know is there. But I think the missing component on some level is AI because you're able to mine a lot of data and actually like identify these correlations at much larger scale. So I would say yes, but we're not going to get into like orthopedics tomorrow. And I think we're very, very committed to dental as our core. And then there's things just surrounding that could happen, say in a dental practice that you would also want as a patient. Um,
Yeah.
might not
And I
be
think
very
that's more than enough, as you're saying, with the systemic, and it is real, and people are seeing it more, and that it should start at the mouth and work outwards, where it's packed. It's but the opposite. So I think you're in the right space, doing the right things, and I see so much opportunity there. So thank you for sharing, Julie.
Well, no, you were just talking about some of your partners. You've partnered even with the ADA and some other big organizations. What's the organization that Mike became the president of? That it is like an oral systemic health. Um,
AOSH, I believe
it's
it's called.
AOSH, yeah. So I don't know if you've talked with him at all, but definitely we'll introduce you.
Yeah, I
If you
believe
have.
we have. Yeah,
Okay.
we're involved with a lot of um, different entities, private and public, to try and advance this entire sort of effort. I think it'll yield really interesting results and value, but it takes
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of interesting. You have this very entrepreneurial, you're a very calm person, by the way, too. Are you always this calm? Or, I mean, every time I see you, you're calm.
I don't know. I guess I'm pretty calm.
So I'm kind of curious about your upbringing. I mean, you're a parent. You were brought up by a dentist father. Did you see your dentist father being overworked back in the day, or did he really have a great lifestyle? Out of curiosity.
A very classic situation where my mom ran the practice and my dad did dentistry. My mom is an excellent operator. My dad would be a terrible operator. Like he's very artistic and very good at dentistry. He did great dentistry. We had a great life. I mean, it was like but I think it was a very classic story in a way of like a mom and pop operation, and they did it very successfully. But my mom really did like all of I mean, with the staff, all the back office work, and my dad was able to live the dream and focus on dentistry for the most part.
Now that's great to hear. And so many dentists and dental offices don't necessarily get to do that, right? There's just too much control. They don't have the tools and the things like Pearl to help make their lives easier, where they can just practice dentistry and everyone else can. Can you share some other things that you've grown up with, that you've done to help make you a better entrepreneur? I mean, what are some things that you do outside of the building multi-billion-dollar companies? What do you like to do for fun? Obviously, you're in Southern California. There's plenty to do there, but can you share with us and
Yeah.
our audience, what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, I'm a person that easily gets interested in things. Like I won't play golf because I know I'll get obsessed with golf. So I'm a very big tennis player. So I play tennis a lot. I have a wood shop. I'm really into woodworking. I build a lot of stuff in the wood shop, furniture and fine woodworking stuff. I'm kind of obsessed with chess. So I play a lot of chess. Other than that, I try to, like, limit more things because I don't have enough time for any of those things to begin with, and then obviously spend a lot of time with, family and
Do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert? Because
I
I can't get a read on you.
I personally feel like an introvert, but my life is very extroverted. So, I'm very comfortable being, like, alone for 9 hours in my wood shop, and I really enjoy that time, like, listening to a podcast, just doing stuff, but I'm very social, and I'm out all the time and on the road all the time. The job of a CEO is, you know, typically very extroverted. I think both, to be honest.
So, as a parent, if you could instill any particular words of wisdom into your child, I'm sure you're doing this, but is your child older than 4 and do you have more than 1?
No, I only have 1 right now. Plan
Okay.
to have more. My child is 4. He's adorable. We actually just got a 3D printer a few months ago. We've been 3D printing stuff. That's been fun too.
Like stuff for fun, like toys or
I really just like literally toys, and we'll like design little things in 3D programs and like
that's
that.
so cool.
Yeah, I print some stuff for utility as well, but it's been fun to get him exposed to that. But I mean, look, I'm a first time parent with a young child, so I don't know that I'm best suited to give advice relative to other people. My wife is an amazing mother. She's just like super patient and good. Like she's great. Um, he's an easy kid, to be honest. He likes everything. He's super joyful. He's doing piano and taekwondo and tennis and cooking and performing arts. He just like likes everything. He's just a very easy kid. Mm. So I don't know. Give him a lot of love and encouragement. Let them do what they want to do ultimately, and not try to. My parents were very good about that. They kind of just like didn't try to push me into anything and let me pursue my own curiosity and interests, which I think is always a good thing to do. Just kind of be supportive of that.
Yeah, I love that, the curiosity thing is I feel like we kill curiosity sometimes and unintentionally. My children are in Waldorf education, and they always say, even if your child brings you something that they made or they drew, that never say, "Oh, is that a bird?" You say, "What inspired that?" People will tell you something completely different, but if you suggest a bird, they will see bird. And so we impose ourselves so much, I think, on these little beings, these little individuals, right? But 4 is a fun age, but all 3 of my kids at 4 were the kids that, like, they were throwing tantrums still at 4. It was about 4.5 that they chilled out, and I just remember, like, having to pick them up and leave my cart behind at the grocery store because 'cause they're just, like, kicking and screaming, and then that day that logic kicks in and they're like, "Okay," and you're like, "What? You said okay to my" that you can't have the M&Ms today but I think it's, pretty amazing, and you do plan to have more children. I adopted my little ones, so I'm an older mom. Sorry, Mike, did you have something?
Did you adopt all 3?
I adopted 2 of my 3.
Um,
Yeah, 2 of my 3, and I've had 7 through foster care, and then
wow.
my oldest is biological.
Well, I got to get it, not the other way around.
Yeah, it's been a journey for sure. So I'm just always kind of curious, like people who are running big companies, because sometimes I get a little guilt when I have to travel a lot, right? My children really give me a hard time when I'm out of town, and I don't want to be somebody who's an over consumer on the planet. I'm trying to get creative on how to have a busy entrepreneurial lifestyle and still support my children in that. Are you able to travel and take your child on the road?
Yeah, it's like a whole other thing when we do that, obviously, but we do it, and it's really nice when we're able to. I don't really feel. I definitely feel like I don't want to be away for super long periods of time. Like I think like 10 days. If I go to Europe, and that was kind of the max. And then really, these are not. This is not an age you want to miss, in my opinion. It's really special, and I could probably miss when they're like 14 more days, and it'll be. you
Trust
know,
me, at 16, you're gonna miss a few more days, but I still have to come home for my little ones. My daughter's like, "Oh, she's going? Woo,
yeah,
thank gosh."
I don't feel like a huge amount of guilt. I feel like the kid, he has such a good life. It's very full. He's full of people that love him and give him a mostly it's just genuinely wanting to be around. But I definitely feel like I want to bring a gift and like keep, just like all these same sentiments. But at the end of the day, I think it's healthy for kids to see their parents working. You
Yeah,
know,
so your work ethic is obviously coming from your parents, right? They obviously you had a, great operator mother and a technical
I
bothered?
don't know where that comes from. I'm a big believer in nature versus nurture. I think the research really supports that as well. I think you can really screw people up, but I don't think you can change them that much
Interesting.
on the other side. And that's kind of really interesting new research around that. That's always comported with my personal sentiment around it. Like, I don't even know how much free will we all have. Like, I wanted to be an entrepreneur and I wanted to build all these things. Like, people want to give me credit for it, but really, it's just like I don't really deserve any credit for it if you think about it. Just doing what I want.
Okay, so totally fascinated by that. I'm curious because we met this other very, very, very successful entrepreneur recently who said something very similar. And he said, really, he kind of just lets, he's a hard worker, don't get me wrong, but he lets life unfold. And he sort of just takes the path and kind of doesn't resist it. And sort of what you're saying is along that line, if you will. Is that
Yeah.
fairly
I think
accurate?
I believe in free will on some level. Like, I work super hard because that's how I'm like, that's my composition. And I feel uncomfortable not working that hard. And it actually stresses me out more to not work hard on some level because I feel like I'm leaving things like undone or not completed. And I think that generally describes people pretty well. Like, I think we're constructed in a particular way. And I think if we're not screwed up, then we typically end up being the thing that we were going to be,
That's so
regardless.
fascinating. I love that philosophy so much. It's very interesting and it's contrary to a lot of what you hear people suggesting. And certainly when I apply it to, even if I look at the care of these children who are coming through the foster care system as an example, right? And
Yeah.
Mike and I have an extraordinary interest in giving back in that industry, in that area, because these children are coming up through some really
Mhm.
interesting situations, right? And a lot of them are ending up in that prison system. And so there is a nurture component that's causing some problems, right? But their
Yeah.
nature probably, truthfully, is what you're saying, which is if they were supported a
Well,
little
listen,
more.
I feel like you can make a massive difference because by giving them stability and love, that's the thing that's missing that will just definitely derail someone.
Yeah.
But if you're able to like restabilize them and give them those necessary human components, then like you're giving them the best shot to be
Yeah.
successful. But I'm just a big believer in like again, like nature over nurture, which moms often don't like to hear. But I'm not saying you don't. But
No, I'm open to that. I actually think there's a huge component.
moms are different. Like moms are more fundamental for young children, which is why like it would be harder for my wife to travel or you to travel. There's just a connection there that is like stronger and deeper, and that's just a fact in my opinion, at least for a period of time, and it's a very special relationship.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have a different experience also when you've carried a child versus a
Yeah,
child that you've adopted. And your adopted children also drop into having that same relationship with you fairly quickly. So it's really interesting. People, are always curious if you've never gone through that experience.
yeah.
Both will
How old
end
were
up.
they when you adopted them?
I took them both out of the NICU, so they're babies.
Wow.
I mean, it took a while to adopt them, but they've been with
Yeah,
me
yeah.
since birth.
Uh,
Since they spent some time in the NICU because of situation. But it's interesting, and I love your philosophy, and I have to really, like, ponder it more now, have it.
There's some really interesting research around this. It really corroborates this perspective, and it's just like very interesting.
Question of I have a question about that in your day-to-day life, say as we grow up as adults. So say in a working environment. So like with Pearl and your own company or strategic partners or companies that you work with, how does that interject or how does that play out as we are older and adults in a working setting? Nature versus nurture, how to influence or how to train or how to mold. What are your thoughts regarding that in your own company as well as in
Well, yeah, I
business?
mean, just because that, I mean, it's kind of in keeping with this, I guess, belief system that I represented. It's like we're big believers in hiring for talent and composition versus experience. Experience runs out really quick. Like, yeah, it's nice if somebody has 17 years of experience in a particular industry and knows the ins and outs, and that's like a huge bonus if they also have these other characteristics. But in my experience, smart people can learn things well quickly. And what you really want is like curious, lifelong learners. And we typically, except for certain roles, like we'll opt for that over just having historic exposure. Um, I think that that's like, then you expand your pool from just dental to everybody in the world. Um, I think that sometimes not done and is actually the right decision.
So we hire people into leadership roles, right? And you would hire them based on their character, that they're good leaders, strong leaders. Would that negate the idea that everybody is also still a leader, even if they're technically skilled or whatever the case might be? Or you're just putting the right people in the right seats on the bus? Or,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
If you
sort
think
of
about
this.
something like a head of customer success or something like that, you would think initially that, oh, you really want this person to understand the dental practice and operations and the key stakeholders and what do the front office do and the back office do and how does insurance verification work and like all these things, which like ultimately you do need to understand on some level in order to service customers. But really what you're talking about in that role, when you're talking about tens of thousands of locations and keeping large cohorts of people informed and happy, it just becomes a very analytical job where you need to build systems that scale value to all these stakeholders. And it's really not about understanding the intricacies of RCM. It's about something totally different. It's about building systems. And the people that can do that can do it for any category and for any application. It's a very technical role actually. So while there might be an initial impetus to want to go and get the person who really like knows the space, like what you find is that person actually can't do the right job if you're talking about servicing tens or hundreds of thousands of users in the right way. But look, we talked about Erica and Mackenzie before. So Erica is our head of BD effectively. And Mackenzie is our head of enterprise sales, and they both have been in the industry for a very long time. They're also just excellent at what they do and super sharp, great work ethic, very strategic, and also have all that knowledge. So that's always the best version of it. But we found at Pearl that we've been able to hire best in breed people from just like call it SaaS companies in general, and they've worked out really well.
I'm thrilled to have you on the show today, Ophir. And I'm curious, there's a lot of different things. I know you've got a lot in development, and I know you're all over the map. And you were looking back in the future and you could really say what impact Pearl had and that you'd be proud to say that it had, what would that be? If there was like one thing you could kind of boil that down to and you're looking back going, we did that. I'm sure it's not just one thing, but out of curiosity, what would that be?
I think it's pretty easy actually. I think it would be that no single company elevated the standard of care more in this period than Pearl.
That's great. That's beautiful.
We're really able to impact the reality of outcomes on a day-to-day basis. Our tool set is used with every single patient that comes through the door. And I think that that's very exciting opportunity.
Well, transformational, right? I mean, truly transformational in the space and where dentistry is. And dentistry has traditionally been, many years behind medical and biotech and things. And so I think this is the golden age of dentistry. And, you're right in the
Yeah.
middle of it, beating the drum from the front. So now that's amazing. No, again, I thank you. And I also want to thank, before we finish up here, is Influential or American Dental Institute.
Yeah, and I know you guys are going to be represented well at the event that we're co-hosting. Yeah, really appreciate you being here today. We're going to continue to promote Pearl, of course. You guys are in our magazine, Influence for Dental Professionals. We'll have you in that continuously. I'd love to have a story feature in there on you
Yeah.
as well.
Be honored. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you on Influential Dental today. We've been really, really fortunate with this show. We're so beyond grateful because of the people that we've had on the show. And when we really set out to do this show, it wasn't with the intention that it would go and be this big thing. And so our gratitude goes out to all of our listeners, to all the people who are sharing the show, all the people sharing the magazine. It genuinely is, a gift, and we're thankful on every level. It's been so much fun having you on the show. Any last words of wisdom? And then also, can you share where people might be able to find you and or if they are not yet, or if they've not had a demo, like how they can get the demo and anything like that that we could share with the listeners today?
Yeah. Well, the easiest way to just be to go to hellopearl.com, our website, and just book a demo there. We do have a really nice new rebranded website coming out later this month. I'm very eager for that.
Social media, can people follow you on Instagram?
Yeah, so Pearl's on all the channels.
Okay.
And I'm also I don't really share that much on social media, but
Okay. Don't
I
follow
use my
Ophir,
name there
follow
is
Pearl.
my name's Big Blue Whale, which is very random. People are free to follow me, but you won't be that entertained.
I love it. Amazing. Any last words of wisdom for our listeners before we let you off? And thank you so much again for being here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, and this is super fun and interesting. And no, we're just hoping to continue to have a material impact on the category and a beneficial one. And there's a lot more to do.
Yeah, well, you've definitely had an impact, and I know you're going to continue, and we're going to continue to support you in that as well. Just super good people at Pearl. So, for anybody who's not familiar, definitely check them out. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us as well. Michael, thank you so much for the show today. And
Sure.
definitely check out American Dental Institute, who are collaborators on the podcast as well. And we will see you and reach out to you next time. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ophir.